The world's largest fence spans over 3,100 miles from Queensland to South Australia. If stretched out, it could easily connect London to New York. And if you'd walk next to it, you'd need 6 months to complete the journey. It wasn't built to safeguard the Australian border. Why would it, since Aussies are just surrounded by water? It wasn't meant to protect some important building either. Its purpose is to keep some animal species away from each other. It was back in the late 1800s when Australians started building parts of this fence. They wanted to create a barrier separating the lively, bustling part of the country where cities like Melbourne and Sydney thrive from the harsh, dry outback. They used wooden posts dug deep into the ground, linked up with wire mesh standing about 6 feet tall. Some parts of the fence even have a second electrically charged layer. To make sure this fence did its job, they added some red and white lights to help guard things even at night. A team of over 20 people work full-time to keep things in check here. And every year, local authorities chip in around $750,000 to keep the construction in shape. Why all this trouble? The main reason was dingoes. These gingery, wolf-like creatures are Australia's largest carnivore mammals, and they're also apex predators. They were causing a lot of trouble to local farmers, especially in southern Queensland, where they often go after sheep. For the most part, the fence has been doing its job okay, but it's not foolproof. Some dingoes still manage to sneak through. Other times, wild camels end up crashing into it. That's because Australia has quite a massive camel population roaming around. But this man-made solution did more than locals expected. They thought there would just be fewer dingoes within the fence, but fewer dingoes mean more kangaroos. And more kangaroos mean more competition with the sheep for food. It's not just the bigger species feeling the squeeze. The smaller animals and the greenery also went through changes. With all this competition in a smaller space, locals noticed less diversity in the plant life and small animals. The soil became less nutritious over time, affecting plant growth. Plus, the fence acts as a roadblock for animal migration and seed dispersal. Even the sand dunes are feeling the effects, with less grass cover to hold things together. When scientists looked at kangaroos on both sides of the fence, they noticed that the young pups inside were lighter and tinier on average. The outsiders had bigger feet and heads for their age, and it wasn't because they were eating a different diet. The kangaroos that were stuck sharing the land with dingoes had to bulk up faster to survive. On the flip side, those inside the fence took it slower because they weren't under the same type of pressure. These had to compete with a lot of other creatures for food, so a bigger size wasn't a priority anymore. Researchers are still not sure if this difference is a quick fix or a long-term gene adaptation. What about domesticating dingoes? Wouldn't that help? Many think dingoes were once pets in Australia, but it's not known for sure. These days, they're pretty wild, just like wolves, hyenas, or coyotes. Most of them don't need packs to survive and are solitary hunters with sharp instincts built in. So taming them isn't going to be easy. Still, taking down the construction is not an option for now. Australians are so strict when it comes to making sure dingoes are kept away that they even put laws in place for people who mess up with the fence. Leaving a crossing gate open can put people behind bars for up to 3 months. Damaging the fence can cost people 6 months' worth of their freedom. It wasn't the first time Australians thought a fence could help with animal issues. Before they needed it for dingoes, they experienced a serious bunny invasion. Cute as they are, rabbits were damaging the land used for farming, so locals thought of a 3-part fence. The first one stretched all the way from Ravensthorpe in the south to Pardue Station on the Pilbara coast. It was over 1,100 miles long, making it the longest unbroken fence globally at the time. All these bunny problems could have been traced back to a man named Thomas Austin. Back in 1859, when he first came to the land down under, he thought it would be a good idea to release a few rabbits into the wild, thinking it would add a bit of charm to the place. But since rabbits aren't native to Australia, they didn't have any natural predators at the time. There also pretty adaptive creatures, needing just some grass for feeding. They reproduce at astonishing speeds too. A mama rabbit can have 4 litters a year, with as many as 5 bunnies each. Pretty soon, their numbers boomed. By the late 1880s, the bunnies had caused so much damage that local authorities came up with a proposal. They'd offer the equivalent of almost $2 million today to anyone who could come up with a solution to this long-eared problem. Nobody claimed the prize, but a commission did gather a bit over a decade later and came up with the fence idea. Maintaining those fences was complicated. They had inspectors keeping an eye, with each one responsible for a stretch about 500 miles long. There were also these boundary riders patrolling smaller sections, using bikes at first, then switching to camels or using camels to haul buggies. They even tried using cars at one point, but they couldn't handle the rough terrain and constantly had punctured tires. In terms of its effectiveness, well, by 1902, rabbits were already hanging out on the wrong side of the fence. That's why, 4 years later, they put up another one. It worked for a while, so much so that the local authorities didn't bother helping out farmers past that second fence with rabbit netting loans. Those caught between the two fences, however, still had a rough time dealing with rabbit trouble. Soon enough, rabbits spread even over fence number 2, and it was clear the solution didn't work. In some areas, even while the fences were being built, those sneaky bunnies found their way past them. To this day, the rabbit population still sometimes puts the Australian officials through rough times. The dingo fence may be the longest one, but it's not the weirdest. The aquarium fence in Turkey might take that prize. This 164-foot aquarium fence was built to make sure the expensive villa's ocean view would be visible from every one of its levels. These days, it gathers a lot of tourists from all over the world, eager to see the variety of fish it contains, and even the octopuses. Putting up a see-through structure wasn't hard. The real challenge was connecting the aqua fence to the Aegean Sea through a buried pipeline stretching across 13,000 feet of land. This ensures water constantly flows, keeping the aquarium clean and the fish happy. To make sure no one damages the delicate fence or steals any of the fish or two, the owner also invested in security. He installed a network of 17 cameras equipped with facial recognition. Visitors are free to look and take pictures, but step too close and you're likely to trigger alarms. Another one of those weird fences is New Zealand's bra fence. If you ever find yourself through central Otago, you might stumble upon a fence adorned with bras of all kinds of shapes, sizes, and patterns. Its story takes us back to 1999, when people in the area found 4 bras mysteriously hanging on the fence near Cardrona Valley Road. Some were a bit surprised, but then others started adding their bras to the decor. Some more bras appeared, and it became a must-see spot for tourists. Its popularity was so high that at times it caused traffic problems in the area. Why is Australia so strangely empty? Why haven't we discovered so much of the ocean? Is our planet a perfect sphere? And was the Earth once more purple than green? I bet you didn't know these facts about our planet, so let's find it all out. Australia is really massive. To make it easy to understand its size, it's nearly as large as the entirety of Europe. Home to around 26 million people, Australia is among the countries with the least population per area. It's ranked only 55th for the highest population in the world, while it has the 6th largest land area. Why is so much of it empty? A good guess would be the many dangerous animals hiding behind every rock. At least this is enough for me to avoid Australia. But there's one specific reason to explain this. The dryness of Australia ensures that 85% of the population lives within 30 miles of the coast, and 80% of them live along the eastern side, where rainfall is more common. But although there is an overall lack of rainfall, only 20% of Australia is unlivable desert, and only 40% is considered not habitable by human standards. The water consumption is actually higher than their average rainfall each year, but there is a further ancient water source hidden way below, which can support a much larger population. It's one of the largest underground freshwater resources in the world, the Great Artesian Basin. It covers a staggering 656,000 square miles, which is 1/5 the size of Australia. It holds enough water to cover the Earth under a 1.5 feet deep layer of water. Or, more usefully, it could provide enough water for thirsty Australians over the next 1,500 years. Only 6.5% of Australia has soil suitable for farming, so this doesn't seem like a huge amount. But in case you forgot, Australia is big, and this small percentage is about the size of France. With this massive area available for farming, Australia has more than enough to feed its population, with a further 70% of agriculture products that are exported overseas. So, with plenty of land, food, and water, why are the population figures so low? A very slow migration process is the reason. First, only people from the United Kingdom lived there. Then, they opened their borders to other Europeans, and this restriction remained in place until 1973. You would think almost 200 years would be enough time for a lot of people to migrate, but Australia was just so far away. The risk of traveling such a long way and the cost of the journey meant that people from Europe prefer the shorter and cheaper options to migrate elsewhere, like Canada or the USA. For the past 2,000 years, people have understood that Earth is round. But did you know that it's not a perfect sphere? Through the wobbly rotation of Earth, our planet constantly changes its size, very slowly of course. The North and South poles are surprisingly flat. Earth is pretty much like a ball being squished. Imagine there's a giant hand with the fingers pressing at both poles. Because of this pressure, the equator pushes a little outwards. Along with an uneven gravitational field, Earth has loads of gravity glitches, some positive and others negative, creating an uneven, rocky, and bumpy surface. Some places on Earth have more gravity than others. If you weighed yourself along the equator, you would weigh 0.5% less than at the poles. Not a whole lot, and definitely not worth the trip to change your weight. If you were to measure the length from the center of the Earth towards the furthest point of Earth, you would be shocked that Mount Everest isn't at the end of it. Instead, it's along the equator, which is the pushed-out part. Ecuador's mountain Chimborazo would actually be the tallest point on Earth, as it's the furthest from the center. We still have around 80% of the ocean to map, which is crazy considering how much of the solar system we've explored in comparison. But we're still aware of many of the unbelievable details about the ocean. It covers over 80% of the world's surface, where 94% of the Earth's wildlife lives. And from some of the life in it, up to 80% of the world's oxygen is produced mainly from plankton, algae, and bacteria. One of the most famous, already mapped places is the Mariana Trench. It's the deepest point on Earth, as low as almost 7 miles deep. That's a huge, 5 times the length of the Grand Canyon and deeper than Mount Everest is tall. It's also home to one of the most ancient seabeds on Earth, casually laying low for about 180 million years. The pressure at the bottom is over 1,000 bars, but although this is 1,000 times more than normal pressure, life still flourishes here. Throughout the ocean, there is an estimated over 3 million shipwrecks lying in the murky depths. Countless artifacts sit there untouched, and there could be more than all the world's museums. The mid-ocean ridge is the longest in the world, reaching 40,000 miles. That's almost 10 times the size of the Andes, the longest mountain range on land. The sun is the reason behind the blue and aqua colors of the ocean. This color isn't from the reflection of the sky, though they are both blue for the same reason. The surface of our planet receives white light from the sun, and it absorbs the orange, red, and yellow light stronger. It doesn't absorb the blue light so much, so it returns to how we see it. Of course, this only occurs based on how pure the water is. If the water is full of mud or algae, they scatter the light and overpower the water's natural blueness. There are many factors that determine what color we see on our planet. Could you believe that the Earth was green before? Instead, it was purple. Chlorophyll in our atmosphere absorbs mainly blue and red wavelengths from the sun, and reflects the green ones to what we see our planet as today. Long ago, ancient microbes called retinol dominated the Earth instead of chlorophyll. They absorbed green light and reflected red and violet light. Those microbes had a simpler structure, so they were easier to produce in the low oxygen environment of the early Earth. They provided our planet with a purplish color instead of green. But chlorophyll is more efficient, and as the Earth was developing, it eventually took over. Imagine that billions of years ago, faraway observers could see our home as a small purple dot. I wonder if we could have also been purple. Probably not. The biggest tree on Earth is a giant sequoia named General Sherman. It stands over 280 feet, almost reaching the height of a 26-story building. They believe it to be 2,700 years old, with a circumference of 1,000 inches. Its weight is a staggering 1,800 tons. That's heavy, but it isn't the heaviest living thing on Earth. In Utah, a huge grove of trees called pando works like a single colony of trees. The massive root system connects all of them together with up to 47,000 stems. It weighs up to 6,000 tons and is 80,000 years old. It makes it the oldest living thing known to humans. Now, what about the biggest area of one being? Off the coast of Western Australia, a seaweed grows to an unthinkable size. The Poseidon's ribbon weed has been growing for 4,500 years, spreading underground clone shoots. It's all connected and shares the same DNA with most of its shoots. It covers a massive 77 square miles, the same size as 28,000 soccer fields, or the size of Nebraska. And it won't stop there either, as it continues to grow by 2 feet each year. It's hard to even picture the scale of these enormous beings. Now, just imagine if they were all purple. One interesting thing that happens in map design is the so-called Baltimore phenomenon, or Baltimore effect. This phenomenon happens when a city or another object is left off a map because there's just not enough space, while smaller cities make the cut simply because there's room for them. The name comes from Baltimore, Maryland, which often gets left out of maps because it's surrounded by bigger cities like Washington, D.C. But on the flip side, sometimes smaller and less well-known cities like Alice Springs in Australia end up on the same map simply because there's enough space for them. Like at this scale, Alice Springs, which give or take 25,000 inhabitants, is labeled. But the huge city of Guangzhou, with over 14 million people, is somehow not. This phenomenon is more common on automated mapping sites, but it doesn't happen at every zoom level. On popular sites like Google Maps and other similar ones, you'll only start seeing Baltimore show up at certain zoom levels, like the 5th, 6th, or 7th zoom. Cartographers can tweak their maps to make sure they're useful and convey spatial information effectively, finding the right balance between showing important details and keeping the map clear and focused. The best maps are the ones that show key elements clearly, while still accurately representing the world. But Alice Springs is not the only weird thing on the map of Australia. Look at the time zone map. This 10.5 section looks a bit off, huh? Well, Australia is officially divided into 3 standard time zones: Western, Central, and Eastern. Australian Central Time aligns with UTC plus 9:30, with individual states and territories deciding whether to observe daylight savings time. Australian island territories and Antarctic stations contribute to the complexity of the time zones. Despite this, Australian time zones are generally easy to understand. In addition to the official time zones, there is an unofficial hybrid time zone called Australian Central Western Standard Time. This time zone is halfway between Western Time, UTC plus 8, and Central Time, UTC plus 9:30, making it UTC plus 8:45, a unique quarter-hour difference. Australian Central Western Standard Time is only observed in a small area in far southeastern Western Australia, along the Eyre Highway. The Australian Central Western Standard Time area includes settlements such as Cocklebitti, Madura, Mundrabilla, Eucla, and Border Village. Only a few hundred people live in this region, making it easier for them to agree on a non-standard time zone. Despite the lack of official approval, Australian Central Western Standard Time continues to be followed due to the significant time gap between Western and Central time zones, especially during the summer when South Australia observes daylight saving time and Western Australia does not. The use of this unique time zone can often lead to confusion, even amongst the locals. Eucla police, for example, operate on Perth's time zone, causing occasional tardiness to events such as community gatherings. Locals mentioned that in the past, Eucla operated on its own unofficial time, which made things simpler, before the transition to align with Perth time. They also face confusion as their location in South Australia does not observe daylight savings. The history of the Australian Central Western Standard Time dates back to the establishment of a telegraph station in Eucla in 1877. Although the exact origins of this time zone are unclear, it is speculated that it was adopted to avoid confusion at the telegraph station located on the border between Western Australia and South Australia. UTC plus 9:45 was historically utilized in Australia as a time zone known as Central Western Daylight Time. Certain roadhouses along the Eyre Highway in South Australia and Western Australia adopted UTC plus 9:45 during the summer months when South Australia observed daylight savings time. While not officially recognized by the authorities, the boundaries of this time zone are clearly outlined and often depicted on local road maps. 5 locations in Australia, including Border Village, Kaiguna, Eucla, Madura, and Mundrabilla, previously observed UTC plus 9:45. Currently, these areas operate on UTC plus 8:45 due to Western Australia's lack of daylight savings time. Australia is not the only example of weird time zones. China has a population of approximately 1.5 billion people, and it's the 3rd largest country in the world. Despite its vast size, China operates on a single time zone known as Beijing time or China Standard Time. This unique time zone covers almost 5 geographical time zones within the country. At times, in some cities in China, the sun rises as late as 10 a.m. People often have lunch after 2 p.m. or even after 4 p.m. if they're not in a hurry. Since 1991, daylight savings time has not been observed in China. However, the region of Xinjiang, located in the western part of the country, follows Xinjiang time, which is 2 hours behind China Standard Time, and is considered an unofficial time zone. Nepal also has its unique time zone, as it operates on Nepal time all year round, without the use of daylight savings time. It's a bit unique compared to other countries because it has a UTC offset of plus 5:45, meaning that Nepali clocks are 5 hours and 45 minutes ahead of Coordinated Universal Time. This is only a 15-minute difference from neighboring India, where the standard time used to be the same until Nepal decided to set its own time zone in 1956. Now, let's examine the map of Europe. Great Britain, Portugal, and Spain are all located at roughly the same latitude. However, despite this, it's 1 hour earlier in Portugal and the UK compared to Spain. Why is this the case? In the 1940s, Spain was instructed to switch to German time, a directive that was accepted by Spanish authorities. Over time, despite changes in leadership, Spain remained in the same time zone, resulting in it being 1 hour behind its neighboring countries at the same latitude. But like many other countries, Spain sticks to daylight savings time. Greenland would rank as the world's 12th largest country if it were independent, but it's currently part of Denmark. The country has 3 different time zones. Most of it is 3 hours behind Greenwich Mean Time, except for only one town on the eastern coast, which is 2 hours ahead. Thule Air Base in the northwest operates on GMT -4, while the tiny population of Danmarkshavn sticks to GMT. Daylight savings time was implemented to give us more daylight during the evenings after work, which could help save energy by lowering the need for lights and heat. It was first suggested by Benjamin Franklin in 1784 to align waking hours with daylight and conserve energy, and was implemented in Port Arthur, Ontario in 1906. Since then, many countries have adopted the practice, though some regions near the equator or at high latitudes opt out due to minimal variations in daylight hours. In the United States, daylight savings time is observed almost everywhere, except in Hawaii and Arizona. Arizona's scorching hot weather makes daylight saving time kind of pointless. People there would rather get stuff done in the cool morning hours than sweat it out in the evenings. However, the Navajo Nation, which is autonomous Native American territory, sticks to the same daylight savings time schedule as the rest of the country, even though it spans 3 states, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. They keep the time consistent across their lands. As for Hawaii, due to its tropical location, the amount of sunlight doesn't change much throughout the year. If Hawaii changed its time zone to UTC -9 during daylight savings time, the sun would rise at around 7 a.m. in June. This is because most of the islands are situated towards the west of the Hawaii-Aleutian time zone, and theoretically should be in the next time zone to the west. In the past, Hawaiian Standard Time was based on a different longitude than it is now.
Life is full of weird things, so how about we check a few of them out? Imagine you decided to go out for an afternoon walk, but 10 minutes into your walk, you run into some really bizarre stuff. Let's see if you can guess which of the items on this list happened in real life, or if they came straight out of an otherworldly science fiction movie. In a dumpster on the street corner where your building is located, you find a big white bag. The type you would have to denounce if you were at an airport. It's suspicious and, oh no, there's something moving inside of it. You dare to approach it, carefully of course. You want to open it but decide it's better to do it with a long stick. So that's what you decide to do, only to find out that inside it there are over 10 live coiled snakes. I mean, who throws away a bag of snakes? Even if the situation is a big security hazard, it happened several years ago in England. Well, that was shocking, but you came out of it with all your fingers, so that's a win. Further down the street, you spot another live animal running around all by itself. It's a chicken this time. You look around to see if you can find its owner, but the chicken seems to be completely on its own. What is this supposed to be? A remake of the Chicken Run movie? Or is this what they call a free-range chicken in city areas? Now, if you guessed this was real, you guessed right. It also happened in England, where a CCTV camera caught footage of this weird event. Now, if you want to multiply that by millions, then check out the island of Oahu in Hawaii, where fabulous flocks of feral chickens roam around the place, free as a bird. Meanwhile, you approach a part of the town that's neighbored by a small forest and decide to explore a bit. You don't come here much, so everything is kind of a surprise. You come to the first figure that makes you a little scared. I mean, is this supposed to be Groot from Guardian of the Galaxy? It sure looks like the keeper of the forest, or at least someone put these branches together to look like this. But it's just a natural phenomenon. I guess Mother Nature also likes to engage in some art making, huh? Moving past the forest guardian, you run into what looks like a small mountain of something. But what could it be? Is it made out of clay? You approach it more and more until the blob starts to reveal itself more clearly. You can't believe what you're seeing. These are hundreds of hills of pasta. Pasta! That delicious Italian dish that almost everyone in the world loves. How could someone throw this crazy amount of pasta away? Judging by your last encounter, you thought this was nature-made as well. But probably some restaurant made too much spaghetti and threw it away after it went bad. This fact may be disturbing, but it happened in real life. On the outskirts of New Jersey, someone did run into 100 little pasta hills. The mystery of how the pasta got there still remains. The pasta incident made your heart break a little, but you continue on your walk. And that's when you find an old abandoned house. It looks like nobody has been here for a very long time. You see the usual stuff an abandoned house has: a ripped-up couch, some pots and pans scattered on the floor, old pieces of cloth hanging around. But the surprise lies on the basement floor. Once you go down, you're completely caught off guard when you see a huge water tank with something swimming inside of it. Oh my! Can that really be a shark? Yup. And her name is Rosie. Recently, an urban explorer went to check out an abandoned wildlife amusement park in Australia and found Rosie in a tank. She hadn't been alive for years, but how bizarre is that? Back in a bustling part of town, you stop in front of an electronics shop. The TVs on display are showing some of the world's most bizarre and unique natural phenomena. Since you've been experiencing a lot of bizarreness for the past hours, you stay and watch. Have you ever seen a rose lake before? This hasn't been tainted on purpose, of course. There's one in Senegal, Africa. The so-called Lake Ripa, or Loch Rose as known by locals, has become internationally famous for shining in its vivid pink color. It's one of the world's saltiest lakes, with a saline level of over 40%. And in case you were wondering why the water is pink, I assure you this has nothing to do with otherworldly factors. It's actually due to the high levels of salt. There's an algae that lives there that produces red pigments. Even if you thought this could be fiction, nah, it's really real. And you can travel there anytime you want to. After all this exploring, you stop to buy a burger in the street joint. Once you're finished, you walk to the nearest dumpster to throw away your garbage. But, oh no, it looks like the trash is moving again. You've already seen a family of snakes this morning. What could you find now? Well, before you can get any closer, a black bear pokes his head out of the trash. Ah! You scream and get as far away from it as you can. Whew, that was close. I mean, it's not every day people find wild animals in dumpsters. But this is also a true story. A garbage cleaner had a real-life encounter with a bear and made it out all in one piece. Well, good for him. Moving on, further down the street, you find an old abandoned building. Since it's never a good idea to go inside, that's of course exactly what you do. This place feels like you were teleported to ancient Egypt. The building itself looks like an old Egyptian temple built in sand-colored stones. The first thing you see is a statue of a pharaoh, but then you notice some pizza ovens. Was this an Egyptian-themed pizza parlor? You find some flyers around that explain everything to you. The enterprise was meant to be called Pizza Tut, but halfway through renovations, the company ran out of money and abandoned the whole thing altogether. The best part? Pizza Tut would have existed in New Jersey if it hadn't gone broke. Too bad it closed down, right? Well, next, you grab your phone and figure out you have no idea where you are. You put your address on Google Maps, but before it gives you any results, your internet goes down. It starts raining like there's no tomorrow. As you seek shelter from the rain, a huge thunderstorm begins. Thankfully, you're safe, but you see something you've never seen before, like an upside-down bolt of lightning coming from the ground up to the sky. Is that even scientific? Yes, it is. Lightning can move either downwards or upwards, from sky to earth or from earth to sky. This can happen when there's a tall object near the spot of the lightning discharge, and the electric field of the flash causes the light to travel from ground to cloud, as scientists call it. I find this shocking. Okay, you were definitely not prepared for all of this. As the storm calms down, you get an Uber home. No more walking for you today. On the ride home, your Uber goes off the path. He says he knows a good shortcut. In a few minutes, you can't believe what your eyes are seeing. You're inside a tunnel, way under street level, and your Uber driver is showing you an old deactivated metro station, similar to City Hall Station in New York City, built in the early 1900s. It's so beautiful, with brass chandeliers and multicolored tile arches. You take a selfie, of course. Hey, who knows? Your Uber drives you out of the tunnel, and you definitely feel like you just time traveled. He leaves you on your doorstep, and you give a big sigh. Finally, home again. I bet you've seen and lived through enough bizarre experiences for a lifetime. Wouldn't you say so? What were your guesses? I bet you imagine most of these things were made up, huh?
I'm about to introduce you to a place where the laws of physics take a vacation. Welcome to the mystery spot, where you can witness all kinds of implausible things that will leave you scratching your head in disbelief. Don't worry, it's not sorcery or witchcraft. It's just some clever optical illusions that mess with your brain and make you question reality. Back in the day, when the Great Depression was hitting hard, people needed some fun distractions. That's how the entertainment industry gave birth to the concept of mystery spots. One of the most famous mystery spots is the one near Santa Cruz, California. The name is all intrigue and mystique, isn't it? Once you step inside, you'll see people standing upright on a slanted floor or at impossible angles on a flat surface. You'll see a ball rolling up a ramp defying gravity and logic. It's like being in a funhouse but without creepy clowns. The site is known for its gravity-defying demonstrations, which appear to bend the laws of physics, both on the short uphill walk and inside the wooden building on the site. Misperceptions of the height and orientation of objects occur here. These visual illusions include balls rolling uphill and people leaning farther than normally possible without falling down. Psychologists at Berkeley state that all of the misperceptions stem from the simple fact that the house is slanted at a 20-degree angle. The next stop is again in the USA, but this time at Hoover Dam in Nevada. Here, gravity seems to play with us too. Try this experiment if you ever happen to go there. Pour water from a bottle over the dam. You will witness that instead of going down, the water will start flowing upward. The reason behind this is a very powerful updraft that the structure of the dam creates. In other words, the water gets carried upward by the wind. This trick is not unique to the dam, as there's a reverse waterfall in the Faroe Islands. It occurs due to a wild weather phenomenon known as an inverted waterfall. Imagine a gigantic whirlwind of ocean spray swirling up a steep, 1,542-foot high rocky cliff. So how does this crazy phenomenon happen, you ask? Well, it's all thanks to a spiral column of air that rotates near high and steep cliffs, creating a mini tornado effect. And when the wind hits the edge of the cliff, it gets even stronger and picks up coastal water, which then splashes up the cliff and creates a massive water and wind funnel. Apparently, these inverted waterfalls can happen in other places too, like on the cliffs of Moher in Ireland, the mountains of Iceland, and even in the Waipuhia Falls of Hawaii. Talk about Mother Nature showing off her skills. Magnetic Hill in Ladakh, India? The ultimate mind-bending road trip destination? Here, you can watch objects and cars roll uphill like they're stuck in some kind of magnetic vortex. It's an optical illusion that occurs thanks to the sneaky slopes and general layout of the area. The road might look like it's going uphill, but it's actually a downhill road in disguise, playing tricks on your brain like a mischievous magician. You might also see your car moving by itself in the neutral gear. No, your car isn't haunted, it's just basic physics at work. Even when the engine is off, the wheels can still turn, thanks to momentum and the subtle slope of the road. Mount Aragats has a similar story to the Magnetic Hill of India. This one, too, is like a magnet for thrill-seekers and car enthusiasts. It's located on the border between Turkey and Armenia. It has a reputation for making cars defy gravity. People from all over the world visit this mountain to witness the incredible spectacle, where a car parked on the slope seems to roll uphill all by itself without any driver behind the wheel. There's a nearby river that flows uphill too. People who visited this site claim that it's easier to go up than down there. Number 6 on the list is the Golden Boulder from Myanmar. The rock looks like it's about to tumble down the hill at any moment. But it's not going anywhere. It's been sitting there for over 2,500 years. The rock is the centerpiece of a stunning pagoda that sits on top of it, towering 49 feet above the ground. According to legend, the rock is held in place by none other than a strand of Buddha's hair. It's no wonder that this place is one of the most important Buddhist pilgrimage sites in Myanmar. The rock was chosen by a celestial king who was impressed by a Buddhist monk's incredible asceticism. So, he used his supernatural powers to carefully place the rock in its current spot, where it looked like the monk's head. If that's not enough, it's said that only a woman can move the boulder. That's why women aren't allowed to touch it. So, if you're up for an adventure, head over to this magnificent rock and pagoda and witness this gravity-defying feat for yourself. Back to the US. Oregon Vortex is located on Sardine Creek, Oregon. It's a tourist attraction that's been around since 1930. The owners of the attraction claim that it's some paranormal activity, but it's pretty obvious some clever optical illusions are involved. Legend has it that even before the attraction was built, Native Americans in the area warned that this land was forbidden, and horses refused to go there. But then, some gold miners built an assay office there in 1904, and the building ended up sliding to a wonky angle. Now picture this. You're in a cozy spot, away from city light pollution, staring up at billions of stars putting on a sparkling show above you. But if you're lucky enough to be in Marfa, Texas, you'll get a little something extra. Mysterious orbs decide to join in on the fun, shining bright like a diamond, and they've been doing it for over 100 years. But what are these glowing orbs called Marfa lights? Well, everyone has their own theories. Some people think they're just car lights from the nearby highway, but that's no fun. Others believe that these orbs are actually sentient beings trying to convey some sort of important message to us, mere mortals. Imagine standing at the edge of a stunning lake, admiring the picturesque view of a majestic volcano. Suddenly, you hear a loud boom and flames shoot up into the air like a fireworks show gone wild. But don't worry, it's not an eruption, it's just the Kauai'jan Lake and volcano doing its thing. This fiery spectacle is caused by a natural phenomenon where sulfuric gases burst through the rocks and ignite upon contact with the outside air. The result? Flames that soar up to 16 feet in height, burning blue like the coolest neon lights you've ever seen. And if that's not enough, the liquid sulfur that streams down the mountain looks like a molten river of electric blue lava. It's equal parts terrifying and breathtaking, and a sight you won't soon forget. Speaking of unforgettable things, the Richat structure in Mauritania has been an eye-catching enigma for astronauts since the dawn of the NASA space program. This circular feature in Earth's crust was created by a raised dome that was eroded over time, revealing the original flat rock layers. As you move from the center of the structure outward, you travel back in time, as the older rock layers are exposed in the middle. This geological phenomenon is made up of sedimentary and igneous rocks and measures 28 miles across. From space, you can see several faults where the rock layers have shifted and have been pulled apart. The Richat structure is situated in the heart of the Sahara Desert. There you go. This is our version of the top 10. Would you add something else to this list?
They say this place is swarming with money. It's been stored there for centuries, but no one managed to take it away from this island. Treasure hunters have been bewitched with this place since 1795. Many people have tried their luck looking for the treasure that could be hidden there by the Spanish pirates or even by the Knights Templar. But today, it's impossible to get there, as it's a private place, so all you can do is book an ocean tour around this island. Otherwise, you can take a peek at it in a TV reality show starring the Legina brothers, Rick and Marty, who are a team of enthusiasts looking for the treasures of Oak Island in Nova Scotia, Canada. Yeah, seems like there's no place where TV producers can't get to. One of the most famous discoveries out there was the so-called Money Pit. Despite the promising name, it wasn't full of money. Now we have to jump to 200 years ago. The Money Pit was first found by a 16-year-old kid in 1795. One day, Daniel McGinnis went fishing at Oak Island. He saw a tree there. Unsurprisingly, it was an oak, and it had weird markings. They didn't seem to be natural, so Daniel decided to check the area. He then saw a sunken patch of ground and started digging immediately. His two friends helped him out, but instead of treasures, the guys only found logs placed underground at regular intervals. It looked like a place where someone could hide money or jewels, but nothing precious was found. However, there was something curious down that pit. Someone found a granite stone there, and it had an engraved inscription on it. There were many attempts to decode it, but most of them ended up in failure. There's one translation though, and it says, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. Yeah, McGinnis and his friends should have dug harder. The next fun thing about the money pit is the coconut fiber found down there. They say that large amounts of this fiber were found at a depth of 60 feet. It may not surprise you, but I have to remind you of one thing. Oak Island is in Nova Scotia, Canada. Coconut trees do not grow there. The nearest one is about 1,500 miles from Nova Scotia, which makes it obvious that someone brought this fiber purposefully. Researchers came up with an idea that coconut fiber could have been used to make ropes and lower all the treasures down the pit. Next up, we have not one, but two mysteries. In the late 1800s, the Oak Island Treasure Company was thoroughly inspecting and excavating the island. Everyone believed something enormous was hidden there. These guys managed to drill 153 feet underground. That's like 15 stop signs stacked one on top of the other. You might have guessed that they didn't find pounds of gold and diamonds, but they found a manuscript. There's a theory claiming that it's one of Shakespeare's lost manuscripts. Some scientists believe that it was hidden there by the writer and scientist Francis Bacon, the true author of Shakespeare's works. Yeah, rumor has it was Francis and not William who wrote all the plays and sonnets. But there's no proof it was really so. The Money Pit may be the most popular shaft on Oak Island, but it's not the only one, and it's not the first. Before the Money Pit discovery, treasure hunters were drilling at Smith's Cove. While damming there, they found a wooden piece. It was a U-shaped formation that had Roman numerals. After a more thorough inspection, the specialists realized it was supposedly dated to 1769. The Money Pit was discovered 26 years later. This fact created many speculations that this structure might have been part of the real shaft with treasures everyone was looking for. Now, look at this Templar coin. It wasn't the first discovery on the island, but it was crucial in some way. Even if it may not sound like a big deal today, in medieval times, those coins would amass an insane amount of wealth. They were typically stored in European fortresses. For the treasure hunters, this coin was a sure sign there was more to be found on the island. The logic is simple. If there's one coin of that kind, there must be something else. And they were right. It wasn't the only Templar discovery. On the southwest shore of the island, a crossbow bolt was found. Experts say it dates back to the 13th century. But, once again, that wasn't something the treasure hunters were after. Some more coins were found on the island. Rick and Marty Legina retrieved this precious piece from a swamp. The coin is made of copper, and this time, it originated from Spain. When it was found, the Legina brothers could only see the number 8 engraved on it. But later on, some experts studied this coin and claimed it was made sometime around the 17th century. They managed to clean it well and saw the date 1652 engraved on the back of this coin. There's a theory stating that Spanish explorers found some treasure but hid it instead of taking it to the king. So maybe this coin just dropped out of the chest full of coins and jewels and is part of the treasure everyone was after. Or someone could have accidentally lost it while looking for the treasure. Who knows? You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They're the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree, It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat. Except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground. Otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caiman spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
Meet Hula Male, also known as the City of Hope. This nickname makes total sense since this artificial island is part of the Maldives' big plan to avoid being completely submerged in the near future. Hula Male was created by placing sand from the seafloor onto a submerged coral platform, and it worked. This city sits about 6 feet above sea level, which means it's twice as high as the Maldives' capital, Male. While more and more people are moving there to live, the island was also designed to serve as a temporary evacuation site during dangerous storms and typhoons. Seychelles is another gem in the Indian Ocean that's at risk of disappearing. Unfortunately, coastal flooding is becoming a common issue there, especially during spring tides and heavy rainfall. The problem is that their main island, Mahé, hosts about 90% of the country's population. Along the coast, it's only about 6 feet above sea level. Fiji is the third tropical paradise on our list, and it's also a top pick for travelers. But this nation is in a tough spot, since it's located right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where huge storms can really turn things into chaos. Take Cyclone Winston. It hit Fiji back in 2016 and ended up costing them over $1 billion in damage. So one thing they're doing to protect themselves is planting mangroves along the coast and preserving the ones that already exist. These trees are awesome since they help reduce wind speed during cyclone emergencies and also combat erosion by trapping sediments. Egypt might be in trouble too. I mean, it's not like the whole country is going to be underwater and we'll only see the tips of the pyramids in a few years. But things could really change for them as coastal cities are facing a serious risk. Take Alexandria, for instance. 45% of its population already lives below sea level. If the city is flooded, not only will everyone have to move, but Egypt in general will suffer a major impact on its fish production. In Europe, one of the most at-risk populations is in the Netherlands, where about half the people live in areas below sea level. In the future, planning a romantic gesture with tulips for your girlfriend could become an impossible mission. The Netherlands is responsible for 2/3 of the world's tulip production. So if fields are taken over by saltwater, it's game over for the blooms. But the good news is that the Dutch have centuries of experience dealing with water, so knowing how to work with storm barriers and seawalls can prevent them from a doomsday scenario. The risks of rising sea levels probably aren't higher anywhere else than here in Tuvalu. This island chain, located halfway between Australia and Hawaii, could be the first state to become uninhabitable. Its stunning land is only about 9 feet above sea level. And just by looking at it on the map, you can see how narrow it is. In fact, the narrowest part in Fongafale is only about 65 feet wide. So even before higher tides become a real problem, the country's limited farmland could be flooded with saltwater. The next country on our list is the Philippines. This archipelago in Southeast Asia boasts some of the most stunning scenery, but it faces the risk of flooding for 2 reasons. First, due to rising sea levels, and second, because of crazy, unpredictable weather. Since 1990, events like cyclones, earthquakes, and tsunamis have cost the country over $20 billion. Have you ever heard of Vanuatu? This chain of islands, spread out between Australia and Fiji, could be flooded soon. Vanuatu was one of the first Pacific nations to relocate an entire community to a safer spot. Back in 2005, residents living in risky coastal areas of the northern island of Tegua moved to higher ground. Next up, the Marshall Islands, a country located in the Central Pacific. Studies show that 40% of the buildings in the capital city, Majuro, could end up underwater in the future. But this country isn't throwing in the towel just yet. They've got a game plan. They are fortifying the infrastructures of their low-lying airport, relocating key buildings to higher ground, and putting up seawalls on rural islands. Heading south, we've got Nauru. This is actually one of the smallest countries in the world, covering just 8.1 square miles. Today, it's home to 10,000 people, but it's on the brink of becoming uninhabitable. Water levels are rising about 3 times faster there than the global average. The Buada Lagoon sparks special concern since it's the only surface freshwater resource, and it's located only 16 feet above sea level. Our next stop in the Pacific Ocean is the Republic of Palau. Rising sea levels are no joke for them either, but protecting their crops, especially taro, is a priority at this moment. About halfway between Hawaii and New Zealand lies Samoa, and this country is dealing with a unique situation. Not only is the volume of water increasing there, but their land is also sinking. You see, a couple of strong earthquakes and tsunamis hit Samoa back in 2009. So as the crust bounces back to its original position, the overall land surface is actually going down. Because of this, their housing and main infrastructure could take a serious hit, especially since all their airports are along the coast. Let's head to Kiribati. This Pacific nation has a big problem with frequent flooding because most of its people and infrastructure are near the coast. Apart from the volcanic island of Banaba, none of Kiribati's land is more than 6.5 feet above the ocean. To tackle this situation and keep their population safe, they had this big idea of making a massive floating platform, kind of like the ones oil companies have. But the problem is that it would cost them a fortune, as the project is estimated to be around $2 billion. If visiting Vietnam is on your bucket list, you better hurry up. The top 10 things to do there mostly involve cruising to jaw-dropping spots like down to Ha Long Bay, also known as the Descending Dragons Bay. But by 2050, the surrounding land over there might be underwater. Another huge problem Vietnam is facing is that the main rice fields are getting salty. And if you're into Vietnamese food, you know how important rice is for them. Right now, they're especially concerned about the Mekong Delta region being vulnerable. After all, this is a highly fertile area responsible for most of Vietnam's agricultural output, with over 50% of it being, rice. This nation is really putting in the effort to adjust to this new reality. They're flushing the rice fields in the Mekong Delta with fresh water to get rid of the saltiness. Our next stop is in the Caribbean Sea. Grenada is an island country, but you may know it as the Island of Spice since its tropical climate is just perfect for cultivating things like nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, and ginger. Unfortunately, Grenada and its incredible fertile soil also face an uncertain future of being submerged. Let's talk about the last country on our list, the Solomon Islands. 5 islands in this archipelago have already vanished beneath the waves, and 6 others are submerged by 20%. They include the Nusa Evili Island, which was once a hotspot to go to for a picnic in the early 2000s. Even though the situation is complicated, it's important to note that more than 300 of the islands there are inhabited. One thing about the Solomon Islands is that it seems like they're always in some kind of recovery mode, since the country often gets hit by tropical cyclones and flash floods. Their population is already working hard to save their homes from the rising seas by building stone walls along the coast, planting mangroves, and constructing houses in higher areas.